rap musicians be more moral and more ethical than anybody else in American culture as they approach the business of creating a product and making money. And for me, this is not to condone the sexism and misogyny of rap, but it is to say that this has to be seen in the larger framework of cultural production within capitalism in our society, and that far from being different from multinational corporations and their processes of gaining greater and greater wealth, one might argue that, rap musicians, especially the success of a certain kind of misogynistic, anti-feminist, anti-woman rap, is totally in line with, if you find a product that gives you the maximum profit and reward, then push that product, whether you actually believe what you're saying or not.
This week, I've been doing a lot of introspection slash self-reflection on my own consumer patterns and the way I buy slash spend money and buy things, and how I see myself in this relationship with my identity. And I'm going through a transformative period in my life at the moment where I'm like kind of moving between jobs, changing the industries a little bit, pivoting into something I really want to work in more, but also in this process of creating stuff, which I will share with you guys. But essentially in that, I find myself often reaching to kind of reascribe a new identity to myself in the way that I've transformed. And I really want to reflect if a lot of other people felt like that as well with the way they consume, and if we saw the way we consume as proof of our existence. And you can look at it on a literal scale, in which the way we consume, we have carbon footprint, like we've cooked the planet. In that sense, yes, that's proof of our existence. Like the way we consume isn't healthy as a species, obviously not. But I think also the way when we buy stuff, do we ascribe those things to a certain aesthetic? Like, oh, this is the thing. I buy like Starbucks coffee. Okay, if you buy Starbucks, I am side-eyeing you, but you buy that coffee from a specific brand because you're like eco-friendly, or because this is where baddies get coffee, or the matcha lifestyle, or you're a slim like Pilates baddie kind of thing. And does that kind of reflection of an identity, or trying to reinforce the identity, also affect your consumer choices as well? I think that was what I was kind of trying to explore. But in that self-exploration and introspection, I was inspired by two videos. The first being the Bell Hooks video slash interview slash discussion, which kind of explores cultural criticism. It's a great video. I'd recommend you guys to watch. But also a really good video lecture, which isn't as long, is the video lecture by Professor Zhang, which he discusses consumerism as the perfection of slavery. And I guess this video takes it a step further, where I completely agree with his point, but I also think I see consumerism as a new form of identity also. But if you're new here, hi, I'm Sharon, and this is Sharon Unfiltered, where I explore media, fashion, politics, and everything in between. I guess before we start this video, I also just want to ask, how are you guys feeling? My friend watches my videos, and I've been told I don't ask how you guys are feeling. I tell you guys how I feel, but I don't be asking you guys. So this is your chance to speak. But I do agree. I think it's important to have like dialogue in this, because I guess often at times a lot of the channel is just me self-reflecting, but it's also great to see if people have similar reflections as well. At the moment though, it's hot. We're currently having a heat wave across the UK and most of Europe, and I know we're in a fleece, so we're more in the latter half of the heat wave, so it's a little bit cooler now, but it's just hot, and I'm busy, and I'm just getting through so much work. Like I have like a lot of policy work to get through after this. I can't lie, I did kind of procrastinate because I had like a friend's birthday shindig like yesterday, so we had to go out, and I've just come back this morning after we low-key partied for their birthday, which was really nice though. They turned 25, the friend, but also I've just had like a bunch of work around the documentary slash mini short film about internet partner violence and domestic violence that's going to be out really soon. And because I'm a panel host for the screening, which is happening next weekend, it's just quite a bit of busyness at the moment. So stress, heat, busy. But I think that's just how I'm feeling. So how are you guys feeling, I guess? Because it's important to ask. I feel like I will keep this up now from now on to just ask how you guys feel. But yeah, let's get into it. So, who is the consumer? I don't really want to go with a stock like line definition, because consumer is obviously someone who buys something, and essentially that the simplest form of definition. But I do think the consumer is me and you. I see myself as a consumer, like on a day to day basis, we're constantly buying stuff, and the relationship I have with consumption is really interesting because for a huge amount of my life, I didn't grow up with much, so I didn't really buy much, so I didn't really consume much essentially, except for like my basic necessities such as like food, meals, a roof over my head. But in even getting money and having a job now and working for myself and being able to like take myself on experiences that I didn't have from someone who comes from a low income working class household, of a single mother household, that I didn't have as a kid, has been definitely enriching. But it's always been with a tinge of guilt. Like a friend called me out about this a few years ago, that I felt really guilty to spend on myself. Like I could spend on other people, but I had this guiltiness on spending on myself because I didn't feel like I was deserving. And that's kind of the relationship I had with consumption and spending and money for a long time. So it's just really interesting me now reflecting on that, and now looking at this in the transitional period of my life in which I'm also changing again as a human being. Like I think I've changed so much in the past year. I don't think I would have been doing this kind of video like a year ago, but I think I've grown so much. But in growing so much, I've kind of like, in that growth, anytime I've transitioned, I've kind of ascribed myself into different aesthetics. Like at a certain point, I ascribed myself to an earthy aesthetic. And the reason why I kind of blew up on TikTok when I first started on TikTok like a few years back is because I was doing earthy fashion inspo for mid-size / plus size girls. And that was something that was obviously really enriching and really powerful for me, but it's not something I would do now because I've changed as a person again. But I think often at times when I'm in transitional periods of my life where I feel unstable or unsure of myself, and where I don't really like myself, not that I hate myself, I just don't like who I am currently, or feel like who I was doesn't really fit where I am in life at the moment, or the stage of life I am. So it's really, I feel myself reaching out to kind of spend and buy and reinforce a form of identity or a form of self. And that's just something I really want to explore in this video, in this idea of the way we consume proof that we exist, or proof of identity. So this whole idea of I consume, therefore I exist. But in reflecting on my relationship with consumerism identity, one of the things I've had to stop myself from doing recently, especially as I keep working in corporate spaces, because in corporate spaces you have to dress a certain way. So I took it as I also had to spend a certain way, and like how would a corporate body spend, and where would she go? Where would she go to eat? And it was very question. But obviously, if you like those kind of stuff, then obviously it's enriching to you. But I felt as though I was reaching out of it, not because there was necessarily things that I obviously enjoyed, but rather as a way to reinforce my identity, especially as someone who comes from a low income working class single mother background, that I felt it was a way for me to like soothe the inferiority complex that I was feeling, that I do not belong in these spaces, because I'm the first person in my family to be in these spaces. And obviously, a lot of people in the rooms don't look like me. Like, when I started the current role I had now as an intern, and now like I do like board meetings and sort of stuff like that, like I'll walk into rooms and I'll be the only black person there, first of all, but I'll also be the only young person there as well, second of all. Like, it must have been one of those gala dinners, like this was back last year, November, and I was sat, obviously she's serving us, and I was speaking to one of the waiters for like a good 20-30 minutes, because it felt so awkward, because outside of work I didn't feel like I had anything to connect with the people in the room. And like obviously we do all do such great work, but it was still astounding to me, like in 2025, which was like last year, that there's literally so little black people, but also so little young people in spaces about decisions and stuff. And so I felt as though I was reaching out in a way to my spending habits, as a way to soothe myself of feeling inferior, that I don't belong in these spaces, because obviously I also don't see other people in these spaces. And I know people are like, oh, be the change you want to see. I am in the space now, but like there's no one else. I don't see anybody else. So it does feel quite isolated. And then I feel like there was a guy on TikTok that made this really great reflection that I completely agree with. He was like, working in corporate sometimes as an individual from working class background is you sometimes having more in common in the cleaners of your office than the people you work with. And that perfectly explained the kind of inferiority complex I was sort of feeling. And I felt as though my consumption habits try to suit that as well. And it's one of the things I've been reflecting on while traveling. Because at the moment, I've been traveling for most of summer. I'm trying to do like 3 countries in 3 months. And traveling has been such an enriching experience for me. But I think it's also because I'm mostly offline when I'm traveling. So I post everything like after I've traveled. So I've had like these really deep reflections because I'm not really as online as much as I would be when I'm working and stuff or commuting. And I've had this deep reflection about the way I spend, and when I look at the world around me, I'm like, what is how do I see myself and identity in the way I spend money and my relationship with money as well. I also want to reflect on Professor Zhang's video, which is Consumerism is a Perfection of Slavery. I'm just going to be reading some of my notes on this, but I did do a write a Substack article back in November about it because it really was interesting to me, and it really like enlightened me in the way I consume stuff. So Professor Zhang's whole argument is that where consumerism is a perfection of slavery, that unlike traditional slavery, which were in literal chains, capitalist societies create a form of voluntary enslavement in which we consume and we choose to compete. We choose these decisions, we choose these spaces, and the chains are self-imposed. And we don't necessarily end up having a revolution in some sense, where we end up shopping as a way to appease the status frustration or the frustrations we feel in capitalist societies. And I think the symptoms we have of like overconsumption or hyperconsumptions are symptoms of late capitalism, in which everything is all about production and less about the person, essentially. But I argued it was a step further. I felt that consumerism had also become a new form of identity, that a lot of us can't like identify ourselves like in a group essentially because of like class or something. Because I think class is very question marky depending on where you're from. Like the way the UK defines class is very different to how America defines class. But a lot of us can easily identify each other on based on our consumption habits, like what we spend on and what we buy on. Like someone will say, "Oh, we both buy Starbucks coffee." Mind you, I don't support Starbucks at all. No, but it's just what came into my mind right now. But okay, we both buy coffee from a specific brand essentially, and we can basically bond over that. It's a form of identity in the sense that we're both consumers of that brand because that brand has, I don't know, is fair trade for some or something, or has ethical consumption, or they just have really good coffee, and we can bond over that despite the fact we live in different spaces. So I think sometimes our consumption habits act as a form of identity in which we bond over essentially. I also don't want to limit consumerism into just what we buy/spend. I think consumerism also bleeds a lot into the media we consume as well, which is why Bell Hook's criticism on cultural capitalism works in a sense really well. It says that a lot of us often can't identify just based on class alone. Like I said, like someone working class in the UK is very different from working class in the US and everywhere else. But I could be watching BTS, for instance, and someone else in another part of the world, Singapore, Korea, they're also a BTS fan, and we bond over that because we're part of the same fandom, because we consume the media heavily. Same thing with like Star Trek or the Vampire Diaries, or I'm trying to think of Twilight. Yeah, that's a really good example. And that kind of works beyond class and also beyond generations. Like there's now new Twilight fans essentially. So we bond based on shared media we consume, which is not a bad thing, but it's something to really take into interest. And it can also be a negative thing in the sense of people who consume red pill content and they bond over that and have incel chats as well, and they do harmful things. Like either way, we are bonding on the shared identity of the media we consume. Basically, our consumption habits have become a form of identity. And like, oh yeah, people that are like Beyonce fans, for instance, this is a really good example in the sense that Beyonce fans, I think they're called the Beehive, and we bond over the fact that, oh, I love Beyonce, you love Beyonce, with the Beehive, and the Beehive becomes a form of identity in that sense as well. And while it's really enduring to be able to bond over this shared love of a certain type of media, for instance, like Beehive, I also think it's really important to know that you are being sold something. And a really good example of this is Charlie XCS and the whole Brat brand/Brat Summer thing. So if I think of Brat, I think party girl, unapologetic, and you just feel like a free woman if you think about Brat Summer, like a free woman that's not being judged. And so that's the kind of identity that's been sold to you, but also in the sense that it's kind of being sold to you that it is a feminist identity. I'm not saying that Brat is feminist, but the identity that's been sold to you of living a Brat Summer is sort of feminist. And so in that, you buy tops, you buy merch, but either way, you basically consume to reinforce the identity that I'm a free woman, I'm a party girl, and I do this unapologetically essentially. So it's often really important as well to realize in these spaces as well, the way in which you reaffirm identity, or that you reaffirm that you belong to these fan bases, or you reaffirm that I belong here and that I deserve to be here, or people, or you signal to other people that you are a fan or you are that identity, is often through spending yet again. And it isn't necessarily the consumer's fault, but it's just something to be considerate about when you start consuming media. Just everything with a pinch of salt. Even when you're consuming media by me as well, just everything with a pinch of salt. And what am I essentially, quote unquote, selling you essentially? But I also think these are symptoms of late capitalism. Like, a lot of the issues we have in the way we consume and overspend is to negate the feeling of isolation we feel from late capitalism. Late capitalism has stripped us of things that public services used to cover, like community halls and community shared spaces, or in the way that we used to have time prosperity and now we have time poverty, where we cannot have these ethnic community spaces that a lot of communities, African, Asian, Middle Eastern, have been doing for years. And that's a really good point that I think a creator, I can't remember her name, made. If you guys can remember her name, please like tag her below. But she made a really good point around that we've been stripped of these community spaces, and now we are now being sold subscriptions into community spaces. Like, the solution of this deprivation of lack of community and isolation people feel is to pay into a community club, to pay into like a book club, to pay into, we're basically paying into spaces that used to be traditionally for free, or pay into a coffee club, and coffee spaces used to be traditionally for free as well. It's something I explored in this lack of free third spaces, and why a lot of us are moving online, for instance. But I do see this all as symptoms of late capitalism and us just pleading for a way or solution out, and overconsumption or consumerism seems to be the way in which we enforce identity, and we enforce this question mark that we have from identity when we're stripped away from community sources that would have reinforced identity towards us, or given us a sense of identity, or given us a way to discover identity essentially. But I think outside of that, I also think there's a lack of patience in finding yourself. I think for me, especially with capitalism, I'm always in a rush to do something and do something quickly. So I was never really about the journey, but always at a destination. Like, oh, what does it look like at the end? And that's how I did a lot of stuff. Like, what does it look like at the end? And that really made a lot of things painful for me in life. I think that's how a lot of us like see the way in which we discover ourselves as well. This uncomfortability of not knowing who you want to be, or who you are, makes us uncomfortable, so we buy things to reaffirm some sort of identity. And a really good quote by Cheryl Strayed I want to say, from her book Tiny Beautiful Things. She says, the useless days will add up to something: the shitty waitressing jobs, the hours writing in your journal, the long meandering walks, the hours reading poetry and story collections and novels and dead people's diaries, and wondering about sex and God and whether you should shave your underarms or not. These things are becoming. And that was such a reflection for me, or you can read it for me as well, because I think for me, I fallen into this trap of always being productive. Like, everything I do must have like this productive thing behind it. And it took so much fun and joy out of doing things in this question of finding myself, or this needs to be really quick, that days that you even find useless, for instance, you try and strip yourself of that, but that also strips you of the humanity and enjoying of becoming essentially. And becoming isn't necessarily an easy process. And I'm still in the process of becoming as a 21-year-old. But I do think a lot of things that we take for granted, like the silences, like I was really uncomfortable with silence, and being able to sit and be slower and do things more consciously and just look around you. I think it's a really good Substack piece, which I think I should read, that your life isn't necessarily boring, but rather you haven't taken notice of the stuff around you essentially. And in being able to pause and sit and just, even on my commute now, like I genuinely just sometimes, I have my headphones on, but it's pure silence. Like sometimes just really comfortable sitting in silence. And I didn't realize how much trying to multitask and do so much was stripping me and exhausting me, until I started to just really slow things down and put a little bit of joy into things that aren't necessarily productive into my life, but they do make me feel better essentially. And those things, as the process of becoming, like, what do I like and what do I think is cool and why do I think these things are cool? And one of the tools I used to discover like why I thought things were cool, things I liked, especially as someone who couldn't afford anything but had internet access, was Pinterest. And this is not like a Pinterest like subscription or paid ad, but it was really cool at the time. Before now, Pinterest got really weird with the AI stuff and everything else. But when Pinterest was like first like coming up, and it wasn't like, it was really nice. I just used to like collage stuff, and then slowly I started to fall into a trap of, oh, I need to buy this thing when I have money. But I think I kind of refined myself or got myself again in the sense that I started to save stuff in a way where instead of saving like a whole outfit, I'd save in sections where this would be tops or collars, and it would be an answer to why did I like this thing. So necessarily, I wouldn't have to be going outside to buy stuff, but I'll look in my closet and be like, oh, I do have something like this, and I like this thing because of the color, or it's an off shoulder top. I like it because it's an off shoulder top and the style of it. So that was something that was really interesting me in the way I first of all like created. I think sometimes as well, I best using the stuff around you and using free stuff around you to kind of just like explore a bit about yourself, have a little fun with things you do. But I also think in this idea of consumption and constantly looking online for forms of validation and forms of answering questions about yourself, we start to lose sense of self in this fight for individuality. We kind of just start to mesh into blend into everybody else, whether we realize it or not. But you also feel like you're never enough. You constantly buy things to reassure yourself, and it's a continuous and constant cycle that never essentially ends ever. And you have to kind of reinforce yourself that you are enough, and I am enough without having to buy things, and I'm not the things that I am wearing, that I am enough regardless if I have this thing or not, essentially. So it's one of those things we have to question yourself as well. But finally, I did want to talk about cultural consumption within capitalism, which was what Bell Hooks' video on cultural criticism explored really well. She talks about it through MTV, like rap culture, just rap music videos in general, and the type of misogyny and hatred they spew through. And even the men, the videos, or the rappers don't necessarily have to believe it, but it's profitable, and the people who are consuming it do believe it though, which is why I say everything that you consume take with a pinch of salt at times. But in the sense that you create a sense of cultural capital of this is what the black lifestyle looks like. The black lifestyle is ghetto, raggedy, tough and violent, when it's not really necessarily those things, but that's what media portrayal looks profitable, and that's what people want to see in media portrayals. And suddenly that kind of has a self-fulfilling prophecy and kind of becomes reality as well. And the consumption, the way we consume that kind of rap culture also construes the way in which we look at black people who dress a certain way. I would be like, oh, it's not all black people. Those who wear hoodies are ghetto raggedy. Mind you, I could just be wearing a hoodie because I want to wear a hoodie. And it's very weird in the way we look down on that as well. But I think also in other stuff, like the representation that happens in like the way we look at council culture and council flat culture, someone who's lived in a council flat, it's like the mockery of working class bodies or people of color in like low income circumstances, also really interesting in the media we consume. But essentially, I do think not just consumption, also just like give proof of identity, also construes the way in which we view other people's identities and the labels we ascribe to them essentially. But I do think overall in this reflection, especially recently when I've been like clearing up clothes, because I am sort of moving between spaces at the moment, so I pack clothes. I'm like, well, the thing I really want to buy in my basket, I sort of had that at home already. And you rediscover stuff you've had, like, especially someone who has like a lot of clothes because you move everywhere. You're like, oh, this is nice. I could have worn this with this. And you kind of rediscover things you like. So I think the question is, with the way you consume of is, I often question myself, do I need this thing? And I sit on it. And if I still really need this thing, like a few weeks later, like it's really on my mind, I will get it, but only then. And then I also try not to put like feelings of guilt towards it. I think at times, obviously, it can be like a sort of dopamine menu to shop, but that can also be a bad habit that shopping gives you boom, boom, points in your head. When does it become an unhealthy habit too? And that can quickly happen very quickly, essentially. So it's really important to not necessarily section off your emotions, but regulate your emotions in certain activities that you do, with like things with spending, for instance, and so on. But I guess that was sort of my reflection on consumerism, my reflection and my relationship with it. And I really want to thank my really good friend Mabel for really just inspiring me for this video, because it was part of this really long discussion we had. And I was like, I was trying to tell her that I find myself reaching to buy stuff I don't need, but I feel so inferior right now. Like I don't know who I am at the moment, and I felt like I need to buy things to reinforce a sense of self. And it was just a really intimate discussion we had. So thank you, I guess. And I hope you guys also enjoyed the video, but I would like to know your thoughts and reflection of this. And I really like that we can have an open space where you guys don't necessarily always have to agree with my thoughts, or I love that there's this room for this disagreement because it gives a lot of nuance into you guys will make points that I hadn't considered, and you guys really give really good book recommendations as well for me to go and read. So please keep doing that. I'm really just open and excited to see where this goes. But thank you for watching. But please like, share, subscribe if you haven't, and check out the Substack. I will start posting Substack again, and yeah, stay connected, and the TikTok as well. Actually, yeah.